Hello again. We thank you immensely for joining us on the Tuesday edition of Journalists Hangout. I'm Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Today on the program, confusion in Oyo as claims and counterclaims trail appeal court verdict on governorship tussle. And later on the show, 26 political parties sign peace accord in Bayelsa State, promise violence-free governorship election as violence breaks out at meeting venue in Kogi State. I will be hanging out with Babajide, Kolade-Otitoju and Olayinka Oyegbile. Journalist Hangout starts now. Welcome once again. It is said that judges have the power of life and death. So who are we to question their liberty to exercise such powers? The Court of Appeal sitting in Ibadan delivered judgment on the disputed governorship election in Oyo State, leaving us in limbo regarding who wins. In its judgment, the court allowed the appeal filed by candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC, Bayo Adelabu, at the same time setting aside the decision of the Election Petition Tribunal that upheld the election of Governor Seyi Makinde of the People's Democratic Party PDP. Nothing but confusion, claims and counterclaims trail the court verdict as both the APC and the PDP are claiming victory. But parties were ordered to maintain the status quo, which means Makinde remains the governor. Let's hear from the legal team.
One thing that we can say for certain is that the declaration and return has not been affected in any way. The Court of Appeal, in their wisdom, said they did not agree with the lower tribunal. They did also say that they did not agree with INEC. INEC's declaration is sacrosanct. It remains until any other pronouncement from the court. We have not seen the details of the judgment. You are all in court and you saw that the details were not read to us. As far as we are concerned, there's no cause for alarm.
We all listened to the judgment, and the appellate court, they've made us to know that other judgments are not of general application, that cases should be decided on their merits. You've seen you listened to what my lord said about the evaluation of judgment, of evidence, that when there are evidence before the court, the evidence of all parties before the court should be evaluated. Judgment should not be based only on the evidence of a party.
Welcome once again to Journalists Hangout. I also welcome my guests, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju and Olayinka Oyegbile.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
to the program.
Thank you so much.
Members of the same bench, of the same profession, two views. Babajide, a convoluted judgment, no doubt.
Yes, the judges of the Court of Appeal fell short of sacking Governor Seyi Makinde, because sacking Governor Seyi Makinde would then require that they order a fresh election. But from the evidence that we see from the judgment of the appeal court, which resolved all matters in favor of the APC candidate, it is clear that nothing else can happen beyond a fresh election. But their problem is that within the time that is left, a fresh election cannot be conducted. You know, there is the time ceiling within which all matters related to the election, including resolution of any matter by the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, must be decided. Now, in this case, if you order a fresh election, you are going to give, say, 90 days or so for INEC to prepare for a fresh election. That would be outside of the constitutionally approved of the time ceiling approved by law. that all of these matters should be resolved. I think that was what forced their hand. And then they felt, well, let the Supreme Court decide what happens. In this situation, we could then be faced with a scenario similar to what we've had in Kogi, in Bayelsa, and a few other states. You remember that we only had election in 29 states, governorship election in 29 states. If, from the look of things, it looks very, very likely that that could happen in Oyo State. Unless, of course, the Supreme Court takes a decision that, look, so person is the winner of the election. So person had a majority of lawful votes, therefore swear him in immediately. If the Supreme Court would take that decision within the time that the law prescribes that it has to resolve this matter, then there may not be a need for an election. But in one of Adelabu's, in his briefs, Adelabu demanded that in the alternative, the election should be nullified, because in his view, the election did not meet the conditions stipulated in the Electoral Act. So you could say that one of his prayers was for the election to be nullified. Yes, but he brought it up as an alternative. He wanted to be declared winner on the grounds that he scored a majority of the lawful votes, and that he was able to prove that the election was characterized by irregularities. Now, if we look at the judgment agreed with the position of the APC lawyer, the lawyer of the APC candidate, Yusuf Ali, that the evidence led by the petitioner, that is Adelabu, was not evaluated by the court.
That's the lower,
the lower tribunal. That the evidence was not evaluated by the lower tribunal, and that this invariably amounts to miscarriage of justice. In fact, in one of the lines, the lawyer argued that the fact that witnesses signed the form EC8A is no proof that an election was free and fair. And then he cited Omisiore versus Aregbesola 2015 to argue the point that the fact that the witnesses, I mean the polling agents, signed the form EC8A, which is the result sheet, is no proof that the election was free and fair. His position was that the only way agents can have access to the result sheets is when they sign. So you can sign and then proceed to protest that, look,
you signed on that
you signed just so you can have access to this. And courts have already established that in 2015 in Omisiore versus Aregbesola. So this is the point. What damaged the case for the plaintiff was the fact that the judges of the lower tribunal, of the trial court now, as the case may be, refused to evaluate tons of evidence brought before them, and in the view of the tribunal, this amounts to miscarriage of justice and unfairness on the part of the trial tribunal. The responsibility of the trial tribunal is to evaluate evidence. It is not really the duty of the appellate tribunal. It is your duty to evaluate evidence brought before you. And you can see that even in the case of Senator Olujimi versus Adeyeye, it was Adeyeye's case was damaged at the trial tribunal, also on the issue of evidence.
But if we go back to the lower tribunal, in its own judgment at the time, it had said that much of the evidence presented was based on hearsay, that you cannot go by what local governments say, a local government agency, but you have to go by what the actual polling unit agents say.
No, that's just in one instance. There were so many, they brought so many evidence before them. Because I've been reading the judgment. It's quite
voluminous.
I've been reading the judgment for hours. I'm not even through with it. But from what I see,
okay,
all kinds of evidence. For example, one of the key points upon which, one of the key pillars upon which Adelabu's lawyer built his case is the fact that the actual results did not tally with evaluation with the number of accredited voters. Accredited by the card reader. But the court ruled at that point that the numbers don't have to tally. So what is an election without when you cannot vouch for the fidelity of the accreditation? It means that the figures can be sexed up. The voters card accreditation, the numbers must tally
with the results.
With the result.
All right, Yinka,
But it didn't happen in this case.
Does this now cast a shadow of doubt on the results declared by INEC? You know, Makinde is about 150,000 votes ahead of Adelabu.
Well, until the final judgment is given, we all know that most times what INEC does is either validated by some courts or turned over. Now, with this judgment now, the INEC reputation is still hanging. And the judges, what the judges have done is to push the responsibility now to the Supreme Court. Because what they should have done, give your own judgment. Well, Makinde won, Adelabu won, or whatever is their own judgment. But as it is now, they are sitting on the fence. As one of our bosses used to say, if you sit on the fence, when the fence collapses, you might be crushed. But as the short discussion we had before the program started, this has happened before. It is the responsibility of judges to give their judgment, whether right or wrong. And they should be able to stand by their judgment. But what the appeal court has done now is not being able to let us know. Because when we watch the video, both lawyers are claiming victory. Even as was reported in the newspapers and online from yesterday till today, all the people, their supporters who went to court with their drums and so on to rejoice, they all went back home quiet because they were not sure what exactly the judgment has given. And this should not be the case. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't have to be a lawyer to know that, okay, this man has won this case. Even if you, as I was coming this afternoon, I was asking some lawyer friends. Lawyer A gave a different verdict. Lawyer B gave a different verdict. So we are left with a situation where it is only the Supreme Court that can decide now. And whether the Supreme Court decides left or right, and whether it is right or wrong, it is a fait accompli. Because that is the last court of decision for us in Nigeria. And this should not be the responsibility of the tribunal. They should have given their own judgment that A won, A lost, or B lost. So, in that case, let them now leave the final judgment to the Supreme Court. Although the details of the judgment has not been made available, but
It's available.
it's confusing. It's confusing. Okay, it's available now.
I've been reading it.
It's confusing. Because how do you now talk to, is it Makinde that is the governor or Adelabu that is governor in waiting? What do we have? We have to wait for the Supreme Court and hoping that the Supreme Court will give the judgment soon. Because the state will be in a state of limbo now.
Let me read from the judgment, because let me read one key portion of the judgment.
Okay.
Evaluation of material and relevant evidence and ascription of probative value thereto are the duty and the prerogative of a trial court. It is duty bound to evaluate the entire evidence led by the parties.
Okay.
It carries out this duty by listening to the witnesses and observing them as they give evidence in chief or under cross-examination. It watches the hesitations in answering questions or in promptly answering them, observing any memory loss or attempts to circumvent or dodge questions. It is not right. It is an error for a trial court to evaluate the evidence of one party and neglect the other side. Once that happens, the findings of the trial court and its conclusions will be a mistake, a miscarriage of justice. And he cites, the judges cited Saka, Atuyeye, and others, versus Emmanuel Ashamu, 1987. In other words, proper evaluation of evidence is absolutely important. For in order to determine a case and come to a just decision or conclusion, a trial judge must assess and appraise all evidence before him. Therefore, the cardinal duty of a trial judge is the evaluation of evidence so as to determine where the case of preponderances by quality evidence. This is done by the judge by considering the totality of the evidence placed before him, evaluating same on the imaginary scale of justice, and making findings of facts before applying the law. CPC versus INEC 2011.
Is this not
So
an
if it is
indictment?
established,
Is this not an indictment of the
evidently, this is a
of the tribunal? Then?
tribunal.
No,
that's why
there's no
I'm headed.
doubt about it.
Do you
if
think,
all the matters were resolved in favor of
just before we
appellant,
take Austin's call, Babajide, do you think the tribunal was constrained by the short time ceiling? But let's take Austin's call while you ponder on that. Hello, Austin.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead with your contribution.
My special salute to your panelists. They are doing a good job.
Thank you.
My take on this matter is, to me, this is novel in the history of judiciary in Nigeria. For the first time, at least, the court is unable to decide the actual winner, to make a declarative, to give a declaratory judgment. To me, it is absurd, it is abnormal. If you ask my opinion, Adelabu of APC won. That is, to me, I'm not a lawyer, but at least when you go through logic, that is the decision of the court. Having said that, it is try to say that, like they say, that you cannot know the mind of a judge. My question is it now that the judges who sat on that appeal could not even read their own minds? Well, I just hope the Supreme Court will do the needful by declaring, Adelabu winner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. Babajide.
The Supreme Court will do what it thinks is right.
Yeah.
We are not in the business of determining whether someone is right or not. We are looking at what the law says. We are looking at the judgment. And from the judgment that I have been reading, the fact that the evidence presented by the PDP, by the APC candidates was not evaluated is what brought about this judgment. Because what do you then do as a judge? Do you then allow what amounts to unfairness or miscarriage of justice to continue or to stand? All these judges have done is to say, no, we agree that the APC candidate proved his case before us, but the case was mismanaged at the level of the lower tribunal. It is clear. If all the matters were resolved in his favor, and the judges had these words, used these words in describing what transpired, especially on the issue of non-evaluation of the evidence before the tribunal, then it is clear that what can only happen is a retrial. A retrial of that matter, and it has happened before. When the appeal court threw away the judgment delivered by Justice Thomas Naron in the case of Oyegbile versus Oyinlola, it ordered for a fresh trial. Justice Oloko at that time led the panel of judges at the Ibadan center of the appeal court, if I can describe it as such. And a fresh trial was ordered where Oyegbile prevailed. That is why today, if they are doing elections, governorship election,
cycle.
Osun always has its own governorship elections during what INEC likes to call off season. Yes, just like Bayelsa and all that.
Kogi.
And I'm saying that we could have a similar scenario on our hands in Oyo State, except the Supreme Court affirmed that based on the number of lawful votes, it is convinced that the APC candidate won that election. If the Supreme Court does not want to go that route, the Supreme Court will order a fresh trial it will set up the Chief Judge of the Federation, will set up a fresh panel that will, or the President of the Court of Appeal will set up a fresh panel that will try the matter afresh once the Supreme Court gives that order. And then this is what we'll see. I've heard people say this is novel, like the last caller. No, this is not the first time that it will happen. In Amechi versus Omeher, the justices of the Court of Appeal refused to give judgment. They prefer to leave the matter to the Supreme Court to decide on who indeed was the authentic candidate of the PDP. Authentic governorship candidate of the PDP for the 2007 governorship election. But the justices of the Supreme Court said, no, you can't abdicate your responsibility. Go ahead and deliver judgment. Do what you think is right. Because at the end of the day, we that were upstairs, this matter will still come to us. Yeah. So you can't leave your own duty to us to do. You must go and give that judgment. And they were quite very angry with the justices of the Court of Appeal at that time. In fact, they wanted the NJC to punish those judges for abdicating their responsibility. I think that in this case, that they should have gone the whole hog. Whatever happens, yes, the time ceiling is a factor, but you should have gone ahead to say, well, now based on your judgment, on the judgment that you delivered, that there should be a fresh election. If you are not convinced that the fresh election was the right approach, you could then say, oh, so person
But wouldn't that then mean that they would be ruling against the constitution because the time frame given has
No,
been lapsed?
no, they could see. Look at we are talking about majority of lawful votes.
Yeah.
If Adelabu had succeeded in proving that, because one of his prayers was that
They should.
he scored
More
the
than-
highest number of lawful
Lawful
votes,
votes.
and that he should
Be
be declared winner of the election. So if they were not going to grant, they had the power to grant his prayer. But if you were not going to grant his prayer, and you are faced with this kind of situation, it's a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. You then must make your decision known. You must make a choice. A philosopher said you either go to the right or you go to the left, because the center is a ditch. So rather than go to the center that is a ditch, you either take a decision to stand on the left or you stand on the right. In this case now, they've chosen to stand in the ditch.
The ditch.
Just as that's what a philosopher said. I would rather stand on the right or stand on the left. So this is the way to go. They had the power to say, look, so person won the election having scored the highest number of lawful votes. But if Adelabu's lawyer was unable to prove that indeed that was the case, having then proved to the world that there was that the number of accredited voters was antithetical to the votes cast, that means that the election was characterized by irregularities. You then have the power to say you are ordering a fresh election, which was also in one of the Adelabu's prayers. So I don't know why they chose to just...
As we definitely, this has buoyed the case of the APC candidate, and he may be heading for the Supreme Court. Let's.
No, both of them are headed there.
Yeah,
They
are
are.
definitely.
Everyone, look, in this case now,
Are we looking at another off-season election?
that's what I'm saying. Except the Supreme Court then decides that, look, we don't need an off-season election. Somebody scored majority of the lawful votes, and that person should be declared winner. That is if indeed at trial level
They have
that was proven beyond reasonable doubt.
All right, let's move ahead now. Let's hear from, still to come on Journalists Hangout. 26 political parties signed peace accord in Bayelsa State, promise violence-free governorship election as violence breaks out at meeting venue in Kogi State. Stay with us. Welcome back to Journalists Hangout. We have been looking at that convoluted judgment over the governorship election in Oyo State between the PDP and the APC, Seyi Makinde and Adebayo Adelabu. Moving on now, Babajide, what do you think may have been running through the mind of that judge, that dissented, who had a different view as against the other two panelists?
Yeah, that's his own conviction. They all sat, the five of them, Justice Dati Aya, Justice M.A. Danjuma, Justice Tio Akeju, Justice M.M.A. Adumain, Justice J.Y. Tukur. They all sat to hear this matter at the appeals tribunal, and he must have seen things differently. It's not a new thing for a judge to dissent. When Obasanjo defeated Buhari at the Supreme Court some years back, 2 judges dissented. Or is it 3 judges dissented, and four judges were in favor of Obasanjo. I think this Justice Onogen was one of those who dissented in favor of Buhari.
Yeah.
The Justice Mukhtar, Aloma Mukhtar, who later became Chief Justice, and then Justice Oguntade, the Nigerian High Commissioner to the U.S.
To the
UK, sorry. Those are the 3 judges that dissented at that time. They must have had their reasons, but the rest of them felt, well, we will not need a fresh election and all that. So they refused to cancel the election, and Obasanjo prevailed?
I think
Was it Obasanjo or Yaradua?
Yeah, the Yaradua.
I think it was Yaradua.
I think the thing is, for any judge or justice to dissent, will also enrich our law. It has always been. Because from that, he will give
His
the
reasons.
reasons why he dissented. And for those who are lawyers, this helped them a lot. Because you go through the judgment and read and also compare
And
notes.
Supreme Court will also look at...
Exactly. You compare that, okay, this judge, this is the reason why he dissented. Are they valid reasons and things like that? So it's just that, as is usual, most of the reports today concentrated on the majority judgment. We all gave the dissenting voice just little, maybe because he's dissenting and it's only, as I would say, the majority, the minority we have is say, but the majority will have their way. The dissenting judgment is a good one if only we all study and come down to it and read and be able to understand. We should all not sleep and face the same direction. The judge that dissented will give his own reason. Just like during the Yaradua, the judgment that time, the judge gave his own reason. And when you sit down and read and analyze this, you will find out the reason why they did. It's just like the 1979 Constitution. You will remember the late Professor Bala Usman and what's the other man's name now? Who gave their Oshoba, Professor Oshoba, who gave their own minority report about the 1979 Constitution. Some of the things they pointed out will happen, and what is happening today. So the majority may always have their way, and they may not be right. We need to take a critical look at the dissenting judge's judgment,
Yes.
to see the merits in it, so that it will strengthen our law and it will strengthen our discourse about what is going on in the country.
Babajide, do they strengthen the laws? Do they deepen democracy? Or do they delay the justice system?
You mean when
We have the-
Appeal Court judges behave in this manner?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the justice certainly will have been delayed. Even when it happened, the case of Omeher versus Amechi and PDP, the argument of the Supreme Court was that, look, you just want to delay justice for nothing. Go ahead and do your job. Deliver your judgment. It will still come to us. Why are you pushing it to us? You know? So I believe that whatever happens, a man remains a man. You have to be bold. You have to be daring. You have to be ready to take responsibility. If 4 of you are convinced that this was the route to go, why not just go that route and save us unnecessary mental agony over who really won the election, who didn't win, who won at the level of the appeal, because they've left everything in a kind of abeyance. So people are wondering now, did this really favor Governor Seyi Makinde or the
APC
candidate of the APC? The truth is, I think the APC won because the judges resolved the matter in favor of the APC candidate. So at that level of the court, it is clear that victory went to...
But they said the status quo should continue.
Should
So
remain.
what
But the judgment is clear.
Yeah.
They resolved every matter in favor of
Of
this
the
person.
appellant.
Now,
If
they didn't want to take the decision because of the time.
then who will take
time.
the decision?
No, you see now, because this decision will have, what the decision they will have taken
Yes.
will be to order a fresh election.
Okay.
And they were looking at the
Time.
that look, within the time that all these matters must be resolved. Let's not forget that
Not
this sort
just
of thing,
time, additional cost on democracy, organizing fresh elections.
Let's not forget that this happened even in America. How did George Walker Bush become president? The Florida recount had not ended, but the Constitution of America says on so day, a winner must have emerged. The Constitution did not envisage that, a manual recount of ballots
will take some time.
Will take months. A manual recount of ballots in Florida was already taking months. Once we got to that time within which the Constitution says America must have produced its president. And George Bush was leading by about 500 and something, 5,000 and something votes. They then announced that Bush had won the election before the recount was over. So I guess they were looking at a potentially, I don't know how to describe it. How do we handle this now? Within the time that is left, if we order for a fresh election, it will have serious ripple effect. They now prefer the biggest court of the land to take that decision on their behalf.
So if the Supreme Court takes that decision, you say, well, it is not, we are not the one, it's the Supreme Court.
No, it is the nature, it is how big that decision is that they are.
Evidently, this is unending food for thought for everyone involved, both the PDP, APC, and even the judges at the tribunal, the tribunal court. Let's move ahead now. Less than 4 days to the conduct of the governorship election in Bayelsa State, the cloud of violence hovering over the state seems to have been deflated. This followed the signing of another peace accord by 26 political parties participating in the election. At the event organized by the National Peace Committee in collaboration with the Niger Delta Dialogue on Peaceful 2019 Governorship Election, political parties promised violence-free election. Let's hear from representatives of the political parties.
Anybody else's political agenda is not worth your blood. Do not let yourself be killed in this occasion. 26 political parties have signed the peace accord. We hope that they will continue to honor this agreement, and we hope that the other parties will come forward and sign before the election on Saturday.
The National Electoral Commission, who knows what it did in the last election, if we himself undertook before all of us to do what's right, our votes will and should count in this state. We are not disobeying our country.
We don't need violence. We are one Bayelsa, and we need development. We don't need fight. So we have agreed, PDP, APC, all of them are here. We have agreed that we are participating in the election, and we want the election to be peaceful.
Yes, just heard sound bites from Bayelsa State. Evidently, the stakes are high in Bayelsa. Let's start with Yinka this time.
Well, I'm happy that 26 political parties have agreed to eschew violence in the election. But if you look at it critically, as far as we all know, there are only just two parties contesting election in that state, APC and PDP. The remaining 24, it's good that we have 24 others, but the major focus should be on the two main parties. These are the people that will determine what will happen. I saw there the PRP governorship candidate, PRP in Bayelsa. Perhaps he will only have 3 or 4 votes, so it doesn't count. But the fact that they were able to sit under the same roof and agree that we are going to make sure we have a peaceful election is a good thing, because the stakes in Bayelsa is very high, and we all know that. The APC believes it will win. The PDP believes it will retain its power. And we all know also that even in the PDP, they have problems in the party. So the problem might not even arise as a result of inter-party problem now, but in between themselves. Because those who felt that they have been unjustly excluded from contesting the process, we want to make violence to happen so that the other party might win. So we cannot rule that out. But it is good, and it is something that we must all laud that, yes, it is happening. But the practicality of it is what should matter. And we should come to a point in this country where elections are held and people are free to move about. It should not be, an election is not a war affair. We have visited countries where they are holding elections, you will not even know. People are moving about, no problem, no nothing. But in our own situation, especially in some areas, because we all know what is going on, there are some areas where elections don't take place. If we must be factual with ourselves, it's just selection that, look, we have voted for you, and they just bring a semblance of an election. We hope that this truce will hold by Saturday, and there will be no violence, so that, as the former president used to say, nobody's blood is worth an election. People must begin to understand that election is just like a football game. You win or you lose, and you go home and prepare for another day, another 4 years. So that is the way it should be. In Bayelsa State, in Kogi State, in everywhere that elections are being held, people must begin to learn that it is just a contest.
And is it in Bayelsa now?
Yes.
It is reported that youths say that we will vote, but we must fight. Babajide,
They will vote and fight.
In some areas in Bayelsa, across water specifically, there are reports that most of those areas are flashpoints. Do you think that elections there will be peaceful this time around? We'll have a different narrative.
I've not seen any sign that we won't have violence. Up till now in Bayelsa, people displaced by violence on account of the last election. They are still refugees in their states. They are still taking refuge in the state capital, where politicians, just because they want to rig election, will chase away people who are resident of community, just so that they can have their way and right results. This is the kind of country that we are. And then you turn them to refugees in their own country, just so that you have your way. We saw what happened in the last election in Bayelsa State. A whole senior police officer being led away to be beheaded before Providence stepped in, and he was saved. And I've been asking the IG, this new IG, what he has done about the idiots who seized one of his senior officers. What has he done? Has he put them on trial? We don't put electoral offenders on trial, and we want to put an end to violence. I've seen people sign this accord. This accord meant nothing to some of the people signing. I pity the foreigners who come to Nigeria, who do their best to ensure that at least we are even civilized in the conduct of elections. But a lot of these people that you see, the politicians, they do one thing, they promise one thing, but they do a different thing. They are not interested, a lot of them are not interested in a healthy election. They are not interested in a free and fair election. Bayelsa, as we speak, given the stakes that, given the fact that the stakes are high, I have not seen any guarantee that they won't begin to kill people on election day. The only way they won't be able to kill people on election day is if the people run away from them and they are able to snatch ballot boxes, take away ballot boxes without any form of resistance. They will let the people leave. But when you want to resist them, with the high number of militants in that state, they will still end up killing people. I don't like to be like a doomsday prophet, but I know them very well, especially in those areas that are difficult to access. You know, it happens even in Delta State. Many of the elections in the South, these things happen. So people signing to say, oh, we have agreed that there will not be violence. It's no guarantee that it will not happen. And we have shown that even when we deploy 50,000 policemen, we deploy helicopters, we deploy, we still are not able to stop these felons from beating people up on election day, from intimidating people so that they can rig. Rigging is in our blood already. We do not, politicians make contingency plans for rigging. They have no scruples. They make contingency plans for rigging. We've been told that people, both in Kogi and Bayelsa, INEC official by himself, said that people are already sewing uniform, army uniform, for their thugs. Yeah. And those thugs will go and be banging on your door. Once you come out, they will take you away. If they lie, they can go and guillotine you. Nothing happened. This is how we are doing election in the 21st century. When we should actually be ashamed of ourselves. Smaller countries than Nigeria help them
to conduct elections.
To become what they are today. They are able to conduct free and fair elections because they are not as selfish as our politicians. Our own politicians, selfishness is their middle name. You see a politician moving, that's selfishness on two legs. What they want to do is rig elections.
And journalists are in a dilemma on election day because they can't name and shame political parties that they see to be participating in election malpractice. Is Natasha Akpoti, who is at the center of this storm at that INEC, that meeting, for political parties, is she any form of threat to the leading contenders in this election?
Yes, I think they see her as a threat. When you see Natasha pulls crowds, especially amongst women. Yeah. I've seen some videos of hundreds of women following her all over the place. I'm not saying that she can win the election. I don't think she can win the election, but Oyegbile needs all the votes that he can get in Kogi Central. And if someone from that place emerges with the potential to take away some of the votes that he should get. In an election that is already looking like an ethnic fight, then of course some of his supporters, their blood will boil. And I don't think they enjoy what Natasha is doing, abusing them all over the place. I don't think they enjoy it. So they were the ones who went there and stopped Natasha from being part of the meeting. But I think I'm ashamed that happened, because in a place where you have the IG was supposed to be present, you have the INEC boss and other people, for thugs to be able to run riot and stop someone from attending when that person is a candidate as demanded by the court that she should be.
Participate in the election.
Then it means that something is wrong with us, because we've had that we have deployed so many policemen to Kogi now. Those thugs.
The IG himself was at the meeting.
Yes, and then the IG will be sniffing tear gas. Something is wrong. Those thugs shouldn't even be able to get close to the venue.
At all.
And if these kind of things are happening, the other day they set ablaze the office of, the headquarters of the SDP in Kogi. If these things are happening, people will be scared to come out on election day.
Vote,
because they will think that their lives can't be protected. If policemen can't stop a band of thugs from moving close to where people are trying to organize a peace meeting.
In a confined place.
So what is going on? What's wrong with us? That's the thing. Do you think I will want to move near that kind of place? They will cut my head. So this is the thing.
Yinka, we can't ask enough. What is the point of the accord when the morning is already showing the day in the Kogi election?
Those so-called accords are not what the paper that has been signed on, because they are only mouthing peace and accord. what they are going to do is in their mind. It is, as Babajide has said, it is very shameful that the Inspector General of Police is at a gathering. How did the thugs get
there?
access to that place? I mean, it shows that we don't have respect for law again. Even if it's an inspector in those days, or even a sergeant or constable is in a place,
You can't fear the IG.
everybody will maintain peace. But if the IG is in a place and people are not afraid of him, then what
Is
are
it
we,
me
what,
that they will be afraid of?
I mean, what are we breeding?
You are in Lagos, sir.
What sort of people?
Who should they be afraid of?
What sort of people? What kind of law enforcement agency is it that we are running? What caused the problem in Kaduna between the Shiites and the army? Is it not because they confronted
the chief of army staff?
No.
I mean, if
Maybe these ones will have the courage to go and confront Burate now. I wish they should have the courage.
no, because if a uniform officer, the most
They will
senior
die.
Police officer.
police officer in the country, is in a place and people can go there and cause problems.
You are disrespecting the police. It's just
Complete disrespect. So it shows that there is nobody that is safe.
Okay, lastly, before we go
Yes.
very quickly, Natasha was nowhere to be found when she was being sought to append her signature to the accord. Even her party representative didn't sign. Does this have any bearing on her participation in the election?
No.
It has nothing to do with
It has
She'll
nothing.
participate.
It's just to say that, okay, I've signed that there will be peace. But when they have denied her access to, whatever happens, she might not be liable or might not be held responsible because they didn't allow her to sign. And it's...
We didn't have to allow her to be part of it. Only God knows what will happen to her on election day.
And she's not alone, by the way.
Exactly.
The PDP candidate is also calling on the police IG to intervene as opposition candidates, being intimidated and harassed in Kogi State.
Well,
It's so sad.
we need to become civilized.
Yeah.
That's all I want. We need to become civilized. Election should not be
No, it should not
equated
be a
with warfare.
war and-
War.
Election is not war.
It
No
should
war.
be just a game, people playing and...
And every 4 years, a carnival. We're
Exactly.
happy.
Let's hope that the message resounds in Kogi State, from Journalist Hangout to Kogi and, of course, to Bayelsa. That's all we have for you on the program today. You can join us tomorrow for another edition. You can also watch Journalist Hangout on other platforms showing on your screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Don't forget, our feedback channel is Journalist Hangout at tvcnews.tv. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.